This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we're talking about Labour's newly unveiled proposals to tackle the cost of living crisis, particularly spiralling energy prices. Keir Starmer's party wants to introduce a price freeze, but is that a credible, affordable policy? We hold a detailed discussion with people who really know their stuff. Plus, we're covering the Edinburgh Fringe, where business is booming. We tackle student finances and we look at the stresses and strains on Britain's farmers. All that and more over the next hour here on The Money, after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has set out his party's answer to the soaring living costs. It's a £29 billion plan to freeze energy bills for 6 months. It's going to be paid for, in part, by a windfall tax on the profits of oil and gas companies. He says families wouldn't have to pay a penny more than their current bills for their energy over winter. Labour claim their measures would reduce the rate of inflation by up to 4%. But the Institute of Fiscal Studies disagree. They describe the opposition's plans as an illusion. Ministers are coming under increasing pressure to do more to address the rising cost of living. Speaking to reporters in the last few minutes, Sir Keir Starmer said his party's solution to soaring costs was the opposite to what the government was providing.
I think in a national emergency like this, where we've got so many families anxious about paying the bills, it's right politically that we say every penny should go to reducing those bills, not to compensating shareholders. What I wanted to make sure was that today we could put a fully costed, credible plan on the table which actually answers the question, what will you do to help so many struggling households this winter?
Iran's foreign ministry says Sir Salman Rushdie and his supporters are solely to blame for the attack that's left the author with life-changing injuries. Rushdie's son says his father's feisty and defiant sense of humour remains intact. The 75-year-old author was stabbed several times on stage at a literary event in New York. He's now off a ventilator. The man accused of attacking him, his 24-year-old Hadi Matar, has pleaded not guilty to attempted murder and assault. The government's announced that the annual increase in rail fares across England will be lower this year than the rate of inflation. Ticket price rises are traditionally linked to July's retail prices index, which hasn't yet been published. The Department for Transport said, in addition, the increased prices would be delayed until March from January in a bid to help struggling households. Today marks 1 year since the Taliban took over Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. A national holiday has been declared in the country as citizens are encouraged to celebrate. The Taliban declared control over the city last year amid a mass evacuation of US forces and refugees. Humanitarian aid into the country has been cut significantly since the Taliban took over, as world leaders demand greater rights for Afghans, particularly for women and girls. Defence commentator Jamil Jafar told GB News he's concerned over terrorist groups reforming in the country.
An important day for the U.S. to mark the end of that military operation. At the same time, very challenging day because of the people that were left behind and our allies that were left behind, and that we continue to try to get out of that country. And of course, the concern that the Taliban will permit Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups to reform there in Afghanistan remains a significant concern with the recent killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri there in Kabul itself.
The heatwave is expected to be broken today as 3 days of yellow weather warnings for thunderstorms are now in place for parts of England and Wales. The Met Office says there's a high risk of power cuts and also of flash flooding. Scotland and Northern Ireland had similar yellow warnings in place from yesterday morning as heavy rain hit the region. A hosepipe ban is going to be imposed in Cornwall and parts in Devon from August the 23rd. South West Water says it's the first time in 26 years they've had to implement these measures, despite making, they say, vast improvements to the water storage. It's the 6th water company in the UK that's had to introduce restrictions after an official drought was declared across parts of England on Friday. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Liam for today's On the Money.
Coming up on The Money today, after weeks of silence, Labour's unveiled its answer to the UK's cost of living crisis, proposing a widespread freeze on household energy bills, even as global wholesale energy prices rise. It's an ambitious plan which, if implemented, would cost tens of billions of pounds. But is it credible or just hot air? Do Labour's energy rescue sums add up? As ever, we hold a detailed discussion. Plus, as fertiliser, fuel and feedstock prices spiral, Britain's farmers are having a tough time, not just financially, but also in terms of stress. As suicides among farmers keep rising, we talked to one young farmer from Cornwall. She's determined to use social media to highlight this disturbing trend. And the celebrated Edinburgh Fringe enters its second week, and business is booming, with ticket sales and attendance almost back at pre-lockdown levels, as audiences flock to the Scottish capital. But the artists themselves are suffering, not least from spiralling accommodation costs. Plus, each day On The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. With sixth formers about to get their A-level results, we meet Lynn Grimes. She's head of recruitment at Birkbeck College at the University of London. We talk about the cost of university, student finances, and why so many youngsters, rather than living away for 3 years, are now choosing to stay at home. That's later in the show. And as ever, email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet gbnews. Tell me how the issues we're covering impact you. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan. It's good to be back. And you're on the money. Now, household energy bills are already sky high, up more than 50% over the last year or so. And the cost of gas and electricity is set to rise even more when energy regulator Ofgem brings in a new price cap from October, reflecting higher wholesale energy costs on global markets. Now, the Labour Party's launched proposals to counter soaring household energy bills. Labour wants to cancel the upcoming energy price rise, introducing a price cap freeze, keeping bills where they currently are throughout this coming winter and beyond. In October last year, Ofgem set the energy price cap, which regulates average household fuel bills, at £1,277. In April this year, that cap rose significantly to £1,970. From this October, though, when a new Ofgem price cap comes in, average household bills could soar above £3,600 a year, with war in Ukraine pushing up wholesale gas prices, gas used to generate around 40% of Britain's electricity. And average household bills could hit £4,200 a year from next April. Ouch, industry insiders warn, if global energy prices stay high. Keir Starmer's Labour Party wants to freeze average household energy bills at their current level. That's £1,971 for 6 months from October, ignoring the Ofgem price cap rise. That would shield around 22 million UK households from the 80% rise in fuel bills that otherwise looks likely this autumn. But as wholesale energy prices rise, ensuring households keep paying existing prices, Well, that would cost serious money. Around £30 billion, says Labour. Labour wants to pay for that by backdating the government's windfall tax on oil and gas companies, which took effect in May. They want it to go all the way back to January. Starmer's party says it would also save money by reversing the £400 rebate on household energy bills introduced by former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Labour also rejects Liz Truss's plan to suspend green levies on household energy bills. Freezing the energy price cap would save a typical family around £1,000 a year, says Labour. Starmer's party also wants to cut bills by helping to fund the insulation of up to 19 million UK homes over the next 10 years. But that £30 billion cost of Labour scheme, that funds the price freeze only for 6 months from October. Freezing prices for a year going beyond next spring, that would cost upwards of £60 billion. That's 60,000 million. It's roughly the cost of the furlough scheme, which of course paid for millions of workers to stay at home during lockdown. These are huge sums of money. Can Britain afford to introduce Labour's scheme? Can it afford not to? Is a price cap a better plan than the tax cuts now proposed by both Tory leadership rivals, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak? Everyone knows we face energy bills crisis this autumn, but when it comes to these new proposals from Keir Starmer, do Labour's energy plan sums add up? Grown-up conversations with people who really know their stuff here on The Money. That's what we bring you. But before we come to our panel, let's listen to what Labour leader Keir Starmer had to say this afternoon.
Millions of people are struggling already in paying their bills, and in October those bills, those energy bills, are going to go through the roof, up from just under about £2,000 to £3,500, and then up again in January to £4,200. And many people are going to really, really struggle. So we have a choice. We either allow the oil and gas companies to continue to make huge profits whilst every family suffers, or we do something about it. We, the Labour Party, are not going to stand by. We've got a fully costed plan that says we will keep those prices down. We will not allow these rises to happen, and we are going to have a windfall tax on the oil and gas companies to pay for it. And that is the right compromise, because we're standing with those people who are struggling to pay their bills.
What about in the longer term, if we get to, say, next winter and the price cap's still at, £4,000 or thereabouts, what then?
Well, this plan will take us through this winter, and there are so many people that are anxious about what's going to happen in the autumn, anxious that they can't pay their bills. So this is a real answer, a costed answer to them. The complete opposite of what you got from the government, who are saying absolutely nothing. True it is that in the mid-term and the long term, we need other plans. That's why a year ago I said we've got to start insulating our houses properly, bring the bills right down in the first place, make a massive difference. But we also need to absolutely have a sprint on renewables like solar, on tidal and on wind, so that we're not perpetually in this situation. We need to make sure we're not so reliant on the international market, which is driving these prices.
Would you continue with the plan, though, if the price cap is at £4,000 a year, and how would you pay for that?
Well, look, we've got to assess the situation in April when we get to the situation in April. But the question I'm answering is, what are you going to do to help all of those households that are going to struggle so much during the course of the winter? And we've put a costed plan saying we'll hold those prices, make sure they don't go up. We'll have a windfall tax on oil and gas companies who are making huge profits they didn't expect to make, to pay for that. Complete opposite of what you're seeing from the government. You've got Boris Johnson saying, I know there's a problem with energy prices, but I'm not going to do anything about it. You've got the two leadership candidates quarrelling with each other, an internal fight about just how bad their record in government has been.
When people are...
We are stepping up and actually putting a fully costed plan on the table that will help people through this winter.
Labour leader Keir Starmer there outlining a really meaty policy proposal from Her Majesty's opposition. Labour saying that a price freeze is the best way to deal with these energy cost rises that are widely expected this autumn and again next spring. So let's bring in our panel today. I'm delighted to welcome back to On the Money Michael Jacobs. He's a former advisor to Gordon Brown, a former Prime Minister who's been doing the rounds lately, talking a lot about energy prices. Michael's currently Professor of Political Economy at Sheffield University. Great to see you with us. Another friend of the show, Callum Thompson. He's Managing Director at Business Energy Claims. Callum, great to see you with us And in the studio, she's back. It's Catherine McBride, fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy. Great to have you with us, Catherine, too. Now, Michael, you don't officially speak for the Labour Party these days, but a lot of people in the political and media class know that you are still a very influential guy. You know a lot about the way the Labour Party thinks. You used to advise Gordon Brown, as I said, and you are an expert on environmental policy. What do you think of these Labour proposals which you told me just a couple of weeks ago were very much in the pipeline?
Well, I broadly think that they're a good thing. We've got a real crisis coming, as most members of the public, if not all the political class, have kind of recognised. And there were two ways that you can deal with this, basically, weren't there? There was one way was to allow the price rises to go ahead and then to try and compensate people or give some money back to consumers. The other one was to say, look, let's just not have these price rises and let's then work out how to pay for that. And Labour has done the bolder thing of those two, which is to say, let's not have the price rises. And I am pleased to see that Labour has kind of taken a grip of this subject. Most of the politicians that have been talking about this, largely the government and the Conservative Party leadership contenders, have been pussyfooting around it. If they've addressed it at all, talking about tax cuts, they will make some changes, they will introduce some help. Labour has said, no, we need the plan now, and have set it out. And it's a very bold one, and it is expensive. But they've also shown how you can pay for it. And most of the payment would come through the windfall tax on the oil and gas companies, which is, after all, where our higher bills are going. If people are wondering, well, where's this money going? Initially, of course, it's going to your energy retailer. But they are paying it on to the oil and gas companies who are now benefiting from these huge price increases on the global market, and they are making record profits, as we've seen from BP and Shell and others recently. That's where the money is going. So Labour's proposal is to take it back from those companies to pay for lower bills for everyone. And I think this is the right approach, and I'm very glad to see that the Labour Party has adopted it.
Catherine McBride, let's come to you. You're from a different philosophical part of the woods, if you like, to Michael Jacobs. Michael Jacobs is saying, let's cancel this price rise. For a free marketeer like you, that's pie in the sky. Having said that, in fairness to Michael, in fairness to the Labour Party, they have detailed, more than Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have detailed, how they would pay for their proposals. There's quite a lot of detail in their explanations. Even the IFS said, we said in our headlines earlier, that the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, said that some of Labour's policies announced today are an illusion. That was a specific part, wasn't it? The interest payments on government debt that Labour wants to save from lower inflation from these policies. But Paul Johnson, head of the IFS, did say, to Labour's credit, that they had detailed how they would pay for these proposals.
Well, yes, but they're confusing several things. First, Keir Starmer said that this is an international price thing. Well, I hate to disillusion him, but the commodity price index is coming down. Almost all commodities are falling. Even oil is falling. And most people will have noticed that the price of petrol at the pump is about 10% lower than it was in its height at July.
Because oil prices have come off slightly.
Oil prices have come off. Now, why do they come off? Where the higher the price goes, more people want a supply, and people stop using as much. This summer, a lot of people have been careful about where they drive, how much they drive, and also a lot of countries that can produce more oil have been producing more oil. Now, we want more gas. Now, this has been a history of really bad government starting a long time ago. Every party has been part of this. And so we don't have enough gas. Even though we have physically enough gas, we're not getting it out.
So what of Labour's proposals? They want to cap the energy price and then they'll pay the difference. The government will pay the difference. They're admitting it will cost money, but isn't that the best way to tackle this directly?
No, because they want to pay for that cap by taxing the people who produce gas. Basically, if you want to increase supply, we should actually be giving them a tax break on any increased production. We should be saying to them, OK, your 5-year average was X. Every kilowatt hour you produce above X, we'll give you is tax-free. Get them to produce as much as possible will bring down demand. And also, if you are subsidising people's gas, which they are saying by limiting the amount people have to pay, there is no reason for people to use less. Because the
prices will still be high. I mean, prices will stay where they currently are.
No, the numbers that all of the press is pushing out there is for an average household, and that's assuming the average household uses the same amount of gas they used last year when it was half the price. Basically, the cap is on the kilowatt hour that you use of energy. So if you can't afford your energy bill, you start to use less. You start thinking about where can I use less energy? And there are a lot of ways that you can use less energy. Some of it might benefit other industries where people might, you know, we've gone back to 16th century power with windmills and other stuff. So maybe we have to go back to the 16th century idea of going down the pub at night and using the pub's heating rather than heating our own home.
If the pub can afford its heating, but we're going to come to that. I'm going to bring in Callum Thompson just in one moment because he really specialises in business energy bills. But just briefly, Michael Jacobs, let's go back to you. A part of what Catherine McBride said there was a danger is that because you're using the extra tax revenues from the oil and gas companies themselves, they may produce less, which will compound the problem. What do you say to that?
Well, they have told us that they won't. The BP chief executive was asked very explicitly about the windfall tax proposal, in which he was said, what of all of your announced investment plans will you cancel because you're now paying more tax? And he said, nothing. We won't cancel any investment plans. And the reason for this is well known to economists and business people, which is that your investment plans are funded out of your expected profits. And these profits that the companies have been getting because the energy price has been so much higher are not the expected profits that they were planning for a year or two ago when they made their investment plans. They are pure profit, and they are planning mostly to give them back to their shareholders, not to put them into investment. So that's simply not true. And the more remarkable thing, if I may say, that Catherine said, is that what we want to do is to give the oil and gas companies tax breaks so that we produce more gas, claiming, she said, that this would reduce the price. The price is set on the international market. No amount of extra production in the North Sea will change the international price. We're not such a big producer that we can change the international price. So doing that would simply make us more reliant on gas, which is this incredibly volatile priced fuel. And what we really need to do in the medium to long term, as indeed Keir Starmer said, is to get ourselves off gas and get ourselves more onto the renewable energy, which doesn't have a volatile price set on the international market. It is really extraordinary to think that the solution to this gas volatility and gas dependence should be more dependence and more volatility. That really is not a sensible plan for our energy future.
Catherine McBride, I'm going to bring you back in to respond to that in just one moment. But before the break, we're going to extend this after the break, this important discussion. I just want to bring in Callum Thompson. Now, Callum, you are Managing Director at Business Energy Claims. Thanks for your patience. You specialise in the energy bills of businesses, which, of course, aren't covered by this Labour plan. It's a point we've been making here on The Money since before Christmas. Energy bills, because, of course, we have many high-intensity energy users, not just the hospitality industry, the manufacturing industry, often across those red wall seats. You're focused on the North East in particular. You're helping a bunch of business energy users, aren't you, to bring about a class action, a lawsuit against energy firms. Tell us about it briefly.
That's right, yeah. Well, I mean, there's this enormous issue of mis-selling in the commercial space relating to energy brokers and the way in which they mis-sell and disguise their fees. And we feel that the suppliers have played a big part in that. So we've had a lot of success in bringing claims against brokers on behalf of businesses across the UK over the last few years. But we're now focusing our attentions on the energy suppliers themselves. And by the end of September alone, we expect to have issued proceedings against them for 50 plus cases to the tune of around £1 million. But that really is just the tip of the iceberg when you consider that it's a multi-billion-pound issue per annum. So, yeah, we're well underway with that.
A friend of the show, you've regularly appeared here on The Money, helping us to elucidate these issues. You're very much at the front line of the energy market in this company, helping businesses to get better deals. We will talk to you in more detail about this particular class action that you're organising in future episodes of On The Money. But just for now, how do you feel when you hear the political media class talking about energy prices, energy bills, and Her Majesty's opposition, meaty proposals, as I've said, but nothing in there for business?
Yeah, well, we feel like they're being neglected, and I know I've said this sort of time and time again, but there is equally tens of billions of pounds spent per annum by businesses, and it all feeds through in terms of the supply chain and infects us in other ways as far as inflation is concerned. So we feel like they're being neglected. I mean, if nothing were done and the price cap were to increase to the extent that is being talked about, then it would bring pricing to about the level that businesses are seeing at the moment, which is sort of 45p per kilowatt hour plus for electricity and 10p plus for gas. So we feel like it's been neglected, if I'm completely honest. But again, I suppose, and as has been touched on, it's the extent to which that would really challenge the suppliers, because we've seen the profits that have been earned through the sort of domestic side, but really it's also the commercial space as well, and they're able to capitalise on that gap. So we feel like they're being neglected, and we really feel strongly that something ought to be done and introduced in that regard.
A couple of weeks and I've been away on holiday, Callum. There have been more discussions in the press and across the broadcast media about the prospect of brownouts, blackouts, if you like, power shortages this autumn and into the winter. It's always the business customers that lose their energy first. I'm particularly concerned about smaller companies that haven't got big energy trading desks, that don't have lots of power in the marketplace. But we will carry on this discussion after the break here on The Money with me, Liam Halligan. Stay with us. We're discussing Labour's energy proposals, the centrepiece of Her Majesty's opposition's claims to want to tackle and address the cost of living crisis. Don't go away. We'll be back after this short break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on The Money. It's 1:27. We're discussing the Labour Party's plans to tackle rising fuel bills. Keir Starmer's party wants to basically cancel price rises this autumn by imposing a freeze on the price cap, paying for the difference between wholesale prices and household prices, keeping prices roughly where they are. Now, I'm still with my expert panel. Catherine McBride in the studio, fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy. Before the break, Professor Michael Jacobs, who is a former advisor to Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister, a noted authority on renewable energy and environmental policy more generally, he said that your concern about Labour using an extended windfall tax to fund their price freeze was wrong, because BP have told the Labour Party they wouldn't cancel any of their investment projects, so it wouldn't impact the supply of gas. And he's saying we should be focusing a lot more on renewables.
Well, I think first I wanted to say there is no such thing as a single price. US prices of gas have gone up about 120% in the last year. UK prices have gone up by 240%.
These are wholesale gas prices, yeah.
Gas, and EU gas is up 340%. Now, some of that is to do with US dollars and their currency rates, but basically, if we run out of gas, we're buying from the EU. We are not buying from the US.
And then if there's a crunch, they might not sell to us, right? It could get nasty.
If everyone is trying to get the same gas, the price is going to go up even more. So the idea, it's a great idea to move on to renewables, but we have found that renewables disappear when you need them. Right now, last Friday, when it was the sunniest, hottest day ever, only 17% of our electricity was coming from solar, virtually nothing coming from wind, because the wind drops when the sun comes out. Same today. Today, over 50% is coming from gas. On Friday, 55% was coming from gas. Today, we're making up the difference by importing electricity from the EU in the interconnectors. So this idea that there is one price and it's nothing to do with us is not true. One of the reasons we have 3 new gas fields that should be opened, and I'm sure BP was including that when they talked about how they would open these things, and they're being held up in the courts. Well, one's Shell, Jackdaw site by Shell, the Woolwich field is BP one, and the Cambo site, I think that is also BP. They're all being held up by Greenpeace. So I'm sure, this idea that they're going to continue to spend as much money as they plan to, well, did that include the fact that they're not actually spending any money because of our green agenda?
Michael Checkers, let me give you a chance to come back on that. And also, let me put to you, Michael, a subject that you and I have discussed a lot in the past, gas storage. Successive governments, Labour, Coalition and Conservative, failed to invest in the Rough storage facility, the undersea cave, if you like, where Britain stores lots of gas traditionally off the coast of Yorkshire. Centrica is now saying that it's going to reopen that site. It's going to cost billions of pounds. Do you wish, during your time in government, you'd thought and spoken more about this issue of gas storage, Michael?
Well, we did quite a lot, actually, and it is now 12 years since Labour was in power. And during the period that I was advising Gordon Brown, we talked quite a lot about gas storage. But yes, in general, it would have been good if the Labour government or the following Conservative governments had pushed the energy companies to invest more in gas storage. That would be, as it has been for other European countries, a way of moderating the price increases and certainly the supply constraints that we see. I do have to remind everybody, and to remind your other guest, that there is a huge problem of climate change that we are already facing. If people have been thinking, how come we've had such high temperatures and drought over the last few weeks, the scientists have made that very clear. That's a product of climate change. And the other extraordinary weather events that have occurred right round the world, floods, fires, hurricanes, and droughts and so on. These are the products of climate change, and we've barely started yet. The predictions for the next 15 to 20 years are that these events will get more frequent and worse, and we have to deal with that. And the reason we have climate change is because we have been using fossil fuels for the last 200 years, and the idea that our response to that should be to invest more in fossil fuels, to produce more greenhouse gases, seems to me to be absolutely extraordinary and a willful denial of what climate science has been telling us for a long time now. So, as every country has committed to at COP26 last year and in domestic energy plans, including the UK, we need to move faster and more and further towards a renewable energy future. And we will even out the intermittencies in renewable supply, which are correctly pointed out, through better interconnection with the rest of Europe and with the development of electricity storage as well as gas storage. So this is a path that has been well understood by engineers, by economists, by scientists, and it's the path that we should be on. And the idea that we should be reverting to the technologies of the 20th and 19th centuries, the fossil fuel technologies, is really extraordinary in the face of the climate emergency that we now confront.
Now, Catherine will disagree with a lot of that, but Catherine, I'm going to use my prerogative here to give the last word to Callum on this occasion. Yes. You will obviously be back on the show many times. That's what we do here on The Money. We have grown-up discussions with people who disagree, but who really know their stuff. More light than heat. Callum, the last word to you. Just a word from the business community, particularly small businesses, because none of these proposals, it's fair to say, We've given Labour's proposals a good airing today, but no aspect of the proposals specifically tackles the sky-high energy bills and rising of businesses. No price cap at all for businesses.
That's right, yeah, and we're speaking with businesses on a daily basis who are seeing the effects of it, and I've said this before, but facing 4, 5, in some cases 6 times greater costs in respect of their energy than previously. And, you know, having listened to what's been said, ultimately, as far as the detail that we're close to is concerned, the prices are still skyrocketing. Gas is being traded at over 300p per therm and electricity over £3 per megawatt. And all of that is filtering through to the end user and to the client. So unfortunately, it's an ongoing thing. There are some that are lucky and that are tied into contracts that were agreed long before this crisis, but there are many that are faced with this issue now. And, you know, we just hope that in the not too distant future, it's addressed and something can be done about it.
Businesses don't vote. It's a truism of politics. But what I would say as a reminder is that businesses employ us, generate tax revenues, and indeed pay for everything else across society. Ultimately, it's been a good discussion. You'll all be back, I hope, to carry on this vital discussion in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you so much, Callum Thompson of Business Energy Claims, Professor Michael Jacobs of the University of Sheffield, and indeed Catherine McBride of the Centre for Brexit Policy. So thanks to all my guests. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, A-level results are due this week with more students questioning whether they can actually afford a university education if they can get a place. We'll hear from Lynn Grimes of Birkbeck College, University of London. That's after the GB News headlines once more with Rosie Wright.
A very good afternoon. It's 1:35. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has set out his party's answer to soaring living costs, a £29 billion plan to freeze energy bills for 6 months. The idea is for it to be paid for, in part, by a windfall tax on the profits of oil and gas companies. He says families wouldn't have to pay a penny more than their current bills for their energy over the winter. Labour claim their measures would reduce the rate of inflation by up to 4%. But the Institute of Fiscal Studies disagree, describing the opposition's plans as an illusion. The government's announced that the annual increase in rail fares across England will be lower this year than the rate of inflation. Ticket prices rises are traditionally linked to July's Retail Prices Index, which hasn't yet been published. The Department for Transport said, in addition, the increased prices would be delayed until March in a bid to help struggling households. The Met Office is issuing a yellow warning from today of heavy rain and thunderstorms with the risk of dangerous flooding. The 2-day warning covers most of the UK and may see flash flooding, transport disruption and power cuts. The weather warning will stay in place for southern England until Wednesday. The Met Office is warning those communities could be cut off by flooded roads and floodwater could cause a danger to life. A hosepipe ban is going to be imposed in Cornwall and parts of Devon from the 23rd of August. South West Water says it's the first time in 26 years they've had to implement these types of measures, despite, they say, making vast improvements to their water storage. They are now the 6th water company in the UK that's had to introduce restrictions after an official drought was declared across parts of England on Friday. The 4 suspects thought to be involved in the downing of the passenger jet Malaysia Airlines MH17 will be sentenced in November. Prosecutors say 1 Ukrainian and 3 Russian defendants helped supply a missile system that fired at the plane in July 2014, in which 298 people were killed. The Dutch court that's handling the murder trial announced the date of sentencing for the suspects, who are still at large. The prosecution is seeking full life sentences. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.208 and 1.185 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,474 and 0 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money. Now, GB News reporter Doogie Beattie just completed his Agriculture Week. He visited farms across the UK, investigating the challenges facing this vital industry. From rising fuel costs to expensive animal feed and fertiliser, to say nothing of unpredictable weather, it's definitely been a tough time for British farmers. This buffeting from all sides means that stress, anxiety and depression among farmers has now reached record highs, with warnings of worse to come. Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody went to meet one young farmer. She's taken to TikTok social media to express her frustration, and she's picked up quite a following.
It started as a lockdown hobby, but 19-year-old livestock farmer Maria Warren has gone viral. Her TikTok videos about life on the farm regularly attract 1 million views.
I feel very humbled by the amount of people that are following me, and I couldn't even imagine 30 people in a room watching me, let alone just under 1 million. It's amazing, and to see so many people watching my message and listening and interacting with it is honestly so flattering.
She's aided and abetted by her grandpa, followers from all over the world wanting more of his Cornish lilt.
Please get Grandpa to tell you that everything is going to be okay. Grandpa!
God damn it, mate, everything's going to be okay, you know, so don't worry about it.
But there's a message here. Some 84% of farmers under 40 believe mental health is the biggest danger facing the industry, and it's leading to accidents and deaths.
With agriculture in the UK being the highest amount of fatalities in any industry in the UK, it's so important that we put the message out there that it's okay to be tired, it's okay to feel down, and it's okay to feel alone. Lots of people feel like it, and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
25 people were killed on farms in just April and May this year, making agriculture the most dangerous industry in the country. The University of Aberdeen has found most deaths were due to stress and fatigue.
Mine is tractor driving. You're alone, you've got to concentrate the whole time. You're driving a really big machine. I mean, I'm sitting on the front of it and it's bigger than me. You wouldn't get that with a car. So you have got to really concentrate, whether it's on the road or in a field.
And it's when farmers are out in those fields, with only their thoughts for company, that the problem becomes clearer. Farming is a lonely job. The suicide rate for farm workers is 3 times the national average. In fact, each week, 3 farmers in the UK take their own lives.
And so we are actively trying to do and work with those farmers to help them to look after themselves, really, to consider some of the things that would be a pressure to them in an isolated environment, and help them to consider, to talk through and to look at options available to them so that they don't get to that point, hopefully.
So says the Farming Community Network. So says Maria too. She's determined to spread her message of fun and fellowship to her ever-growing audience. You're never alone, she says, and Granfer agrees.
I joke, boys, we've been having a whale of a time here.
Jeff Moody, GB News.
Now we're into the second week of the Edinburgh Fringe, the celebrated 25-day extravaganza of music, culture and the performing arts, based each August in the Scottish capital. Thousands of hopeful artists from all across the world take to the streets and venues of Edinburgh to perform each year, hoping to build an audience, enhance their reputations, maybe catch the eye of an industry professional. And after a couple of tough lockdown years, this year's sales and attendance figures at Edinburgh are almost back to pre-pandemic levels, which is fantastic news for a truly world-class festival. But the Edinburgh Fringe is not fully back to normal, with performers protesting even more than normal about the vastly inflated cost of accommodation in the city. They've even taken to camper vans and tents to escape the city's sky-high accommodation costs. And now Edinburgh's introduced a new short-term control area for lets for anybody who wants to rent out their homes via Airbnb. They'll need to apply for planning permission from the council. Well, our Scottish reporter Davy Donaldson's been speaking with William Burdett-Coote, director at one of the longest-running venues at the Edinburgh Fringe. Despite drawbacks, he's happy to see the Fringe and his business getting back on track.
Well, I mean, we've got an amazing programme across the whole Assembly Festival lineup for this year. There's 213 shows, I think, across the whole lot. I mean, in the gardens, you've got Jinx Monsoon, which is sold out, obviously a very well-known, famous television name. But we've got great cabaret going on, things like Railed, which is an Australian circus. Across the programme, I think things to look out for are things like Beats on Point, which is a beautiful dance show. It's got a mixture of classical and street dance, so extremely popular, lots of really great music in it. Choir of Man, which is a choir that's set up in a pub, and it's a great medley of songs. It's really one of the most popular things we have on at the festival. The other end of the spectrum, we have Robert Bathurst, who's well known from television from things like Cold Feet, doing a play called Love, Loss and Chianti, which is terrific. It goes on and on, really. I mean, there's cabaret, comedy, circus, you name it. We've got a bit of everything, and yeah, something for people to enjoy.
Choir in a bar, I like the sound of this.
Yes, and they do hand out drinks at the start of the show too, which is extremely popular.
Wonder why.
Yes, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's great as well. I mean, even coming here last year and coming here this year, you can see a lot of changes have been made.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, to have the whole festival back again. Essentially, I mean, I said at the start of the festival, it was 1,070 days since we last did a proper show. So last year there was a kind of mini festival that went on, but this year we've got the entire thing back again. And it's great to see the public out, enjoying themselves without all the restrictions of COVID, and just really sort of being up for having fun.
It's probably like just the old festival is finally back after a couple of years of, of not having it and having it on a smaller scale.
Yes, it's been quite a job winding it back up again. Obviously, when you do this after some time, it's a little bit rusty, so getting it working again has been quite a challenge. But, it's a massive operation, but it's up and running, it's working, and the shows are fantastic. And, what better place to be in August?
Some people have said that one of the main problems and issues are getting staff.
Yes, staff is an issue. I mean, we've had problems this year getting the number of people that we need across pretty much all levels, really. And I think that's across the board. All my friends around the festival had the same issue. And also the problem that you don't have returning staff in the same kind of way, because normally we can, the front of house and box office and bars, you get rolling people that come back for 2 or 3 years. So we've got quite a lot of new people that are having to be trained up. But they're here, it's working.
And how much are you enjoying it so far?
Well, I'm waiting for the enjoyment bit. I've kind of been dealing with the firefighting bit thus far, but, I think I've got through most of that. And now the programme's working, I'm going to set out to see some of the things and enjoy myself.
GB News Scottish correspondent there, Davy Donaldson, talking to William Burdett-Coote, who runs one of the biggest venues at the fabulous Edinburgh Fringe, and good to see it back firing on all cylinders. It's time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Lynn Grimes. She's Director of Student Recruitment at Birkbeck College, University of London. A-level results are due to be published this Thursday. Thousands of school leavers will be making some pretty big decisions. What should I study? Will I get into my chosen university? Should I, given the rising costs and the prospect of student debt, even go to university at all? Competition for a university place is this year set to be fiercer than ever, with many of the UK's most prestigious universities accused of favouring foreign students who pay much higher fees over UK applicants. And even if they can get a coveted place, new research by Birkbeck College, which is part of the University of London, suggests that 88% of students say the current economic climate will impact their choices of if and where they go to university, with more and more looking to study closer to home, perhaps still living with their parents. Well, here she is in the studio to shed some light on these important decisions faced by some of our most talented young people. It's Lynn Grimes, Director of Student Recruitment at Birkbeck College, my latest guest on Money Talks. Lynn, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for coming in to the studio. This is a tough year for students trying to get into university, isn't it? We know that the A-level grades won't be as high as they were during lockdown. Quite a lot of young people who've worked hard will miss out on their favoured university place, won't they?
They will. And on top of that, they're the first cohort of students in 2 years that have actually taken exams. They didn't take GCSEs because of the pandemic, and now suddenly they're having to take A-levels. That's going to impact their grades, without doubt.
So on top of all these academic pressures and disappointments, money's also tight. We're seeing more and more students, aren't we, favouring maybe staying at home, going to university locally. Is that a shame? Do you miss out on something if you don't go away for university?
Well, interestingly, the research showed that the students didn't feel they would be missing out. They felt that, I think there was only 1 in 5 said that that would be the missing out person that wanted to go away from home. I think these 18-year-olds are very savvy. They're very aware of the social issues, the economic issues that everybody's facing. The cost of going to university, the student loan is fine. That covers their tuition fees.
Nine and a half grand a year, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they've got to pay back
and they
if they earn above a certain level.
Yes, that's right. But that doesn't cover their living costs. So I think the impact of the living costs, and perhaps parents can't subsidise them as much as they may have done. We know that 50% of them have said they will have to work while they're at university, and 48%, that's huge, have said they would be looking to commute and go to a local regional university. So, and that's just unheard of. Normally, as you say, students just want
It's like a rite of passage to go away for 3 years, live in a different part of the country, potentially, than where you're from, build an identity and affinity with a different part of the country, and get to meet a broad range of people. Now, Birkbeck is an institution close to my heart. I know it well. It's not only part of the very prestigious University of London, it's got a reputation, hasn't it, for broad access at university. Lots of night schools, people who are already at work, they can do degree-level education on the side, if you like, without any loss of quality at all. As Director of Recruitment there, you must have seen lots of changes over the last few years. Can you outline them?
Yeah, we've seen a massive growth in younger people wanting to come to us. We were set up 200 years ago by George Birkbeck to educate working Londoners.
That's right.
And what we're seeing now is that 18-year-olds are becoming those working Londoners.
Wow.
So they're getting a job. We're an evening university. Our lectures are in the evening.
Yeah.
And yet they still have a social life because we're in the heart of London, so they can, at 9 o'clock, their lectures are finished. They've still got time to go and have fun and either work the next day.
To go large, as the younger generation used to say. They probably don't say that now.
Probably don't say it now.
It doesn't work trying to get down with the kids, does it? Anyway, carry on.
Yes, so we're seeing that they're taking much more they're getting a foothold in the career or in a job.
Having a sort of a hybrid university experience, which usually people maybe in their 30s would have had. So they're combining, a proper job with a world-class degree, frankly.
Yes, they end up with a University of London degree.
Yeah.
So why would they get themselves into huge more amounts of debt than the student loan just to try and live? Accommodation in London for students, well, the accommodation across the country is between £130 and £260 a week.
Yeah.
In London, it's probably nearer the high end of that.
Or even more.
And that's £1,000 a month for just your accommodation. That's without food or a social life.
Or a social life.
So, and we found they are very, very aware of this and the cost of living issues.
A point I must put to you, Lynn, not least because I know it's on the minds of lots of people waiting for their A-level grades and their parents as well. I'm not throwing any accusations at Birkbeck at all. I think your institution has a deserved huge reputation for access and social mobility and so on. But there is a sense, isn't there, that lots of our particularly prestigious universities are now favouring foreign students, giving precious places to people who pay double or even triple fees compared to British students. Is there something in that?
I'm not sure. But the problem you do have is those prestigious high tariff universities have had the last 2 years where they've had to accept many more students than they would normally have done because on teacher assessed grades, people make offers, universities make offers on teacher assessed grades because that's all we have when they apply. And of course, last August, there was no A-level results.
So the number of A's and A stars went through the roof.
And so those universities had to over recruit. So they're going to be a lot more picky this year. Because they need to pull back a little bit on their recruitment.
Very interesting. Well, Lynn, it's great to have you on the show. As I say, a huge fan of Birkbeck College, University of London. And thanks a lot for coming in and being our latest guest on Money Talks. That's all we've got time for today, but join me tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'll continue my focus on the cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. Thanks for joining me today. I've been away for a couple of weeks, and it's good to be back, because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. We're transitioning back to more typical UK weather this week. Cloudier and cooler for many. A risk of thunderstorms, but some places over the next couple of days will stay dry. These thunderstorms will be hit and miss. Low pressure has replaced high pressure, and it's brought a lot more cloud and some outbreaks of rain. It's also turning things cooler, but still some sunshine around and still some heat, especially in the east and the southeast during the rest of Monday. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud, some outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland, some heavy rain here at times. More likely to be showery elsewhere, and just about anywhere could see a heavy shower or thunderstorm this afternoon. Temperatures still reaching 30 Celsius in the southeast, but cooler further north and west, with those temperatures reaching the high teens or low 20s. Through the evening, showers and thunderstorms continue for a time. Again, hit and miss. Some places will avoid them. Some more prolonged rain affecting eastern parts of Scotland, and particularly lively showers there for South Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, again, a lot of cloud cover. Another warm night, actually. Temperatures not falling far below 15 to 18 Celsius. And then we start off Tuesday with further showers, and actually quite a few showers will develop during the day, especially for northern, central and western England, Wales, as well as eastern Scotland. Drier to the far northwest and increasingly brighter, and largely sunny towards the southeast, with temperatures still reaching the high 20s, but back to around average elsewhere. High teens for Scotland, Northern Ireland, low 20s for Western England and Wales. Any showers and thunderstorms will be slow moving on Tuesday afternoon and into the evening. Falling onto dry ground, of course, that could cause some issues where the most intense rain does fall and lightning strikes and hail and so on. Wednesday sees further showers and thunderstorms in the far south, but Thursday is a drier day for many before more rain in the west later.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.